Electric vehicles have long been seen as the future of transportation, but until recently they were more fantasy than reality. The technology was there, but it simply wasn't economical for the mass market. Now the wheels finally seem to be turning in that direction, with costs rapidly falling. Analysts at BNP Paribas and UBS predict nearly 1 in 5 vehicles worldwide will be electric by 2025. That would mark explosive growth from the 2% penetration rate we see today. The key driver will be battery costs, which are roughly 75% cheaper than they were a decade ago and continuing to decline. All of that uptake in electric vehicles means lithium-ion battery makers will be busy. Bloomberg New Energy Finance estimates production will more than double by 2021. But despite what their namesake might suggest, lithium is not the most difficult material for manufacturers to source. That title belongs to Cobalt. Cobalt usage in electric vehicle batteries has grown at a nearly 8% clip over the past 5 years. But battery manufacturers are just getting started. That has BNP Paribas warning of an epic supply crunch that will see demand outstrip supply by a 3-to-1 ratio by 2025. The sky-high demand should keep cobalt prices at elevated levels for several years. Most of the cobalt produced finds its way to the Asia-Pacific region, where many battery manufacturers call home. However, they are quite a distance from the Democratic Republic of Congo, where nearly 2/3 of the world's cobalt originates. Therefore, anyone who can offer a closer source of cobalt should do quite well in the market. Pacific Rim Cobalt believes it has a great opportunity to become one of those suppliers. The company holds an interest in a nickel cobalt project located in northern Indonesia. That puts it just 4,500 kilometers from Asia's top markets. Historical estimates indicate this project contains high-grade cobalt with large and shallow mineralization zones. Pacific Rim already has some permits in place. Now it's working to confirm just how much cobalt it has before moving forward with mine construction. Here's CEO Ranjit Sundar on his vision for becoming one of the world's go-to cobalt suppliers. Ranjit, tell us about this mine in Indonesia, its history, and some of the characteristics that make it unique.
Well, about a year and a half ago, we started a project which can be put into production. So criteria number 1 was it must be production permitted. Criteria number 2, it has to have environmental permitting. Our project has both of those. Equally important, if not the most important, is there cobalt on the project? I'm not interested in drill bit success. It's a long process. We're not getting any younger, and cobalt demand is now. Our project has had over 850 drill holes by US Steel. They were drilling for nickel, but cobalt is a byproduct of nickel. So historical estimates are 37 million tons of 0.11% cobalt and 1.3% nickel. Those are very good numbers. So we're drawn to the asset for the permitting, for the historical work, for the grade, and if you can't get to the project or if it takes days, again, it presents difficulty. We can fly into the nearest airport, drive down a 45-minute hard paved road, and we're working.
So you've got infrastructure. Being in Indonesia, close to China, China, of course, the biggest buyer of cobalt, that just seems like a natural.
Well, again, the cobalt supply chain is very constrained. China is the buyer. China is the biggest gigafactory in the world. It's not Tesla, it's China's demand and what China's doing to secure that demand. China faces Indonesia. China is a large investor in the mining sector of Indonesia and has been for decades upon decades. They operate numerous mines, they understand the regulatory issues, they understand the permitting process. So in building our company, Pacific Rim Cobalt, we're building something specifically for the China market and for what they're looking for, which is cobalt in a jurisdiction they're comfortable with, and that jurisdiction is Indonesia.
It seems as if your path to production is maybe a little sooner than some people might think. So tell us about that.
The majority of our time going forward is going to be mine planning and process options. We know the cobalt is there. We know the nickel is there. Nickel is also a heavy battery metal, which most people don't know about, but we're a nickel project as well as a cobalt project. We'll spend the next 6 months figuring out how are we going to turn ore into cobalt sulfate and nickel sulfate. We have some people on our team who have done this for a living, They're working full-time on it right now. So we'll be mine planning, processing options, and the entire time we're going to be drilling out the higher grade zones and working towards a larger compliant resource.
And when you look at the landscape and some other companies out there that are doing something similar to you, is there a direct comparison, and how does your valuation compare, do you think?
Yes, again, you have to look for cobalt where cobalt is found. It's a byproduct of copper or nickel. 95% of the mines in the world that produce cobalt, it's coming from copper or nickel. Our biggest comparable would be Robert Friedland's Clean Tech, and they're a comparable because they're a cobalt from a nickel laterite. We're a cobalt from a nickel laterite. Our grades are very comparable. The difference is their resource is 3 times as large as us, but their market cap is more than 20 times ours. So that is the clearest public market comparable. There are some private companies out there. The other companies have a bit of a different business model. So Robert Friedland's Clean Tech is the closest comparable.
You touched on overall demand in the cobalt sector. Round it out here, put a bow on it for investors who may be interested, maybe they're skeptical and saying that, oh, aren't people talking about trying to manufacture batteries without cobalt and that kind of thing. So tell us why we should be buying Pacific Rim cobalt.
Well, it's day one. We've just started trading a few months ago. We have a strong treasury to carry out all of our business plans. There's going to be a steady flow of news. There's going to be additional acquisitions, and we are going to be one of the first companies publicly listed who is going to be able to produce cobalt sulfate and put it on a table in a meeting in a very short period of time.